Meanwhile, on the comic box.
Snicked. It's Logan time, baby. Kick it, Liam.
Don't call me Liam, call me Wolverine. Schnickty, schnickty, schnaw.
Oh, it was a Mallrats reference. I love it. But still give us intro music.
Boom.
What? No, it needs to be like, that's too happy. If we're talking Logan, it should be like
Wom, 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 wom.
Comics. Hey everyone, welcome to the Comic Box, part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. I am Rob, your friendly neighborhood comic geek, and with me today is the lacustrine, or lacustrine, I don't know how to pronounce it, Liam O'Rourke. Hi, Liam.
That's me. Hi, Rob.
Would you like to know what lacustrine means?
I would definitely like to know what lacustrine.
Yeah, Lacustrine, our word of the day. Apparently we have these now. Or week, whatever. Its definition is of or relating to, or in your case, living near lakes.
Oh, that...
So
yeah,
I guess that'd be lacustrine.
Yeah.
Right? Because if it's near lakes, it would have to be lay at the beginning.
Yeah.
We live in the land of 10,000 lakes, therefore you are the lacustrine Liam O'Rourke.
That's me. And to be fair, it is more than 10,000. So.
Yes, it is. At least
Take
10,000.
that, Utah, with your one Salt Lake.
Not even, fresh.
Step up.
So this is issue... Oh, no, I had it. Where did I put it?
38?
38. This is issue 38, and it's Logan.
Man.
You just saw the movie.
Yeah.
You've just arrived back from the theater. I was not with you this time. You went and saw it with Dr. Ray, who unfortunately cannot join us, but we say hello to Ray anyway. And I saw it on Friday, so I saw it a couple of days ago, 2 days ago. So I had time to jot notes. Your impression is fresh. So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts. But first, because we have to, because it is part of the show, the Weekly Geekery. Let's crash through this. What have you been up to this week, Liam?
Well, I got together with my buddy Mark, and we played that Marvel deck building game that you and I had played.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, he does a game night on Wednesdays with some of his buddies, so when I got done with work at like 2 a.m., they were still going strong, and they were just wrapping up a game, so I went over there, and then when the new game started, I jumped in.
So what did you think of the deck building game the second time around?
I like it. I mean, I sort of still remembered how to play, because, I mean, it had been a few weeks since you and I had played.
Yeah.
And it's not a really difficult game to learn, But yeah, it was pretty sweet. We used, of course, different villains and heroes than when you and I had played together, so it was kind of cool getting to see some of the different characters that we didn't use. But yeah, we fought Magneto. We were successful in thwarting him. I was not the hero who won the day, but I was neither the one who, did the poorest. So
that's cool. How many people did you have playing?
There were 5 of us.
Wow. See, I'd be curious to see what a game plays like with that many people. I've only ever played it solo or with 2 people before.
Yeah.
We'll have to do that. We'll do that sometime.
Yeah.
What else have you been up to this week?
Other than that, I've just been doing my normal Rocket League, Crotch, Niblet. Check me out. And I rewatched the 6th season of Game of Thrones.
Sort of preparing for the new stuff. It's gonna...
Yeah.
We still got a little bit, though.
We do still have a little bit of time. It was just kind of one of those... I had a hankering to watch it again, because I remember the 6th season being really good, but I didn't remember the episode by episode progression of things, so I just kind of wanted to refresh it in my mind, and it still holds up. I think those last 2 episodes of that season, especially, no spoilers, are some of the best episodes of any television show ever made.
Did you get any reading done? Did you finally manage to dive into Superior Foes of Spider-Man?
I did. I read 3 or 4 of those issues that you sent me.
And?
I like it. It's, again, sort of a different take on the superhero, super villain archetype and the, just the format of how they tell those stories. So it's kind of cool just for that fresh, take on that. They're not characters that I have any particular care for, because I'm not like a Spider-Man guy. But I do sort of like how you get to see how Boomerang is trying to manipulate everybody to, sort of make his own goals come into fruition.
Well, I can say that I have read, I think, more than enough for the both of us. I did some deep comic binging this past week. My month turned over on Hoopla, who, by the way, I assume is not listening to this, but they are following me on Twitter after I was having a conversation with, I'm not looking up the name right now, the Crafting Rogue, I believe, who we talked about last week, was asking for recommendations on Twitter for comics to read. And I just brought up, hey, keep in mind, if you have a library card, you can read comics for free through Hoopla. And so they follow us on Twitter now. So hi, guys. You're not listening to this because you're not a person. You're a thing. Unless you are listening to it, in which case tell Skynet we say hello.
And direct market to us.
Yes. But I read The Long Walk to Valhalla, which was a suggestion by Twitter user Chris Evans. So thank you for that suggestion. That was a really interesting comic. It's a one-off graphic novel, and the basis of the story is there's a guy who lives in rural Arkansas, and he's just going back home for a funeral to collect his things.
Well, that's the only reason you'd go back to Arkansas.
I literally read this yesterday, but the idea is he's leaving home to go work in Tennessee, and he had sort of a rough upbringing, and his car breaks down on his way out of town, and he meets this girl who claims to be a Valkyrie of Odin, who says that he is going to die that day, and it's her job to bring him into Valhalla because in her mind he is a warrior. And so the question is whether or not she's just a girl who knows who he is because it's a really small town and everybody knows everybody, or if this is actually the truth. And so they go on a walk and they talk about his whole life story and they run into other people. And it was a very good read. It's very sort of an introspective thing. But I like those one-off indie graphic novels. It's not trying to start a series. It's not trying to do anything. They just have a story to tell. And I
Thanos'
really like that.
fat fist is nowhere near it.
What's that?
I said, and Thanos' fat fist is nowhere near it.
That's correct. There is no Thanos near this story.
I'm sorry. I have no respect for Thanos.
See, we're going to have that conversation when we get closer to Infinity War because he is probably my favorite Marvel villain of all time. You just need to...
I know he's super powerful. I just don't like him.
No, you just
and
need to
read... And he's got a diarrhea face.
You...
Boom.
You need to read... Well, look at the way he was originally drawn. He looked kind of ridiculous the first time he was drawn. Then they bulked him up and stuff. He even had a Thanos copter. He had a little helicopter that he flew around with when he was introduced in Iron Man.
Well, Spider-Man had a car, so I guess that doesn't...
There you go.
Yeah.
He's had multiple cars.
It's true. And a buggy, I guess I should say.
Yeah. Well, that was what I was thinking. Yeah, this is a spider buggy.
It'd be funny if he had like a Geo Metro or something, just, hey, it's efficient, but
that's right.
Painted like a spider.
Does it climb walls? I mean, no, but...
It gets 40 miles per gallon.
Yeah, that's right. No, Thanos written by Starlin is phenomenal because he's written as sort of this philosopher, warrior guy instead of just big angry dude, which is kind of how it seems like they're building him out for the Avengers movie, and certainly the way that he appears in the Avengers cartoon. You're totally getting me off base here, though. I read lots of comics. I read the first couple trades of the Invader Zim comic book, which was okay. It doesn't quite have all the magic of the cartoon, but there was a couple stories in there that I really enjoyed, and a lot of them are one-off stories where, like, the Earth will explode, and then they'll just start the next issue, up again, which really works. I also did get into the trades that I read. I read all three of my Moon Knight trades, which started as Warren Ellis and then moved into the Colin Brunn run of Moon Knight, which is the one before this really confusing run.
Ooh, a Midnight Brunn run?
Yes, it was a Midnight Brunn run. I also read the first book, as they're calling it, of Checkmate by Greg Rucka, and it's good, but you really feel like you needed to have read, there was I guess we call it a maxi series called The 52.
Oh, yeah.
That took place in between big crisis event books at DC. And you kind of needed to read that, I feel, to sort of get a handle on exactly who everybody is and what's going on. Facts are revealed as the story goes along, which was sort of the way that they were doing things when they did 1 year later at DC, where just they did a time jump. And then they spent their issues explaining what had happened over the last 12 months. But I read that, and that was good. And then I am almost done reading through the first trade of the Black Monday Murders. It is so good. It is so good. It's such a different comic. I think you would probably really like it. I know Ray would love it. It has sort of an Alan Moore feel where in between regular comic pages, you get, transcripts of a conversation between one of the main characters and his lawyer. Or you get
cool.
diary entries from one of these characters from the 70s or something. And the whole idea, and I've talked about this before on the show, this series, the whole idea is the world financial markets are mostly controlled by this one group, and now there's a second group that joined them from Russia, but this one group of Americans who own the largest, bank financial institution in the world, and they do it through like black magic and human sacrifice and stuff.
Oh, you mean
like
the
that.
Rothschilds?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, like the Rothschilds are characters in this book.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting read, and I suggest it to adults, I guess. I'm trying to think if there's it's just dark material. I don't believe there's no outright nudity. There's no I don't know if there's swearing in it or not. You would think I would remember this. I was reading it just before you told me you were ready to record. I don't recall any, but either way, it deals with human sacrifice and some dark stuff, and it would honestly probably go over the heads of a lot of kids. So it's not a book for kids, maybe teenagers, if you got a teenager who really likes sort of more trippy stuff, or maybe is a Neil Gaiman fan. But yeah, so that's what I've been reading. And then I read the first trade of Spider-Gwen. Not the ongoing series, but sort of the first sort of collection of stories. And I thought that was pretty good, too. I really like their alternate reality because I love those comics. You can do whatever you want when it's an alternate reality, which we'll talk about with this movie here that we watched.
Oh, yeah.
Beyond that, what have I been watching? Oh, I've been watching Young Justice again. I'm slowly working my way through Young Justice on Netflix. It is still a really, really good show, and I like that a lot. And then I've been playing some Overwatch. So I got to play a game with Professor Beej from the Geek to Geek podcast. Hi, Beej. It was fun.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, governor.
Speaking of which, I suppose I should say thank you for recommending the Black Monday Murders when we had Sava from Two British Nerds on a while ago. He suggested that book, and it wasn't on my radar at all. And now it might be one of my favorites for the past year, honestly.
Well, I will definitely check that out.
Yeah, well, I can loan it to you once I finish it. The next time we meet up, I'll...
That would be fantastic. And I actually have a little something for you.
Oh, no. I'm not going to
ask. It
ask.
can remain a mystery.
Yeah, no, keep it a mystery.
We'll
reveal. We'll do an unboxing live on YouTube.
It'll be a mystery wrapped in an enigma, smothered in secret sauce.
Fair enough. But I did that, and then I played a little bit of Tom Clancy's The Division. So you can find me on Steam. I'm Noby, Knowby, if you are a Division fan. I have friends that played with me that sort of bum rushed me through the levels. So now I'm into like the end game content thing where it's about the level of your gear rather than your character's actual character level, because that's where they were, and so I was useless to them as a fourth man. Yeah. But that's my weekly geekery. There's a lot of stuff in there. Now, I don't want to talk news at all, but I do want to mention we've had some trailers, a new Guardians trailer, some other stuff come out as well, some other news stories I want to hit on. But because we want to talk about Logan so much, we're going to save all of that for next week, along with the topic of the week that was going to be this week. I suppose I didn't even mention this. This week, we weren't supposed to talk Logan. I was going to wait for another week and give people the opportunity to see it, but realizing that more people will be looking for Logan reviews early, and most of us probably went and saw it opening weekend anyway, and because we're recording this later than we usually do by a couple of days, I figure it's fine, because once I get to this and edit this, we'll be good. So this is coming out a couple of days late. Apologies. But next week, we will get into the distribution side of the comic book industry, which is really fascinating. I went and I did a whole bunch of research, and I prepped my show notes and stuff for it.
And I read your show notes.
Yeah. Well, not my show notes like you see on iTunes, but notes for the show. Sort of a timeline of how things went. It's very interesting. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
You did the research, and I read the research.
That's correct. So we will get to all of that next week. So let's jump into Logan. But first, a message from our sponsors.
I'm Void. And I'm Beej.
And together, we're the Geek to Geek podcast. Well, we make it. It is kind of us, but I guess it's separate.
Every week, we pick a topic from geek or digital culture and chat about it for a while.
And you're invited. We talk about books and movies, games, comics, the internet.
Or really whatever we feel like.
Yeah, that too.
So look for the Geek to Geek podcast on iTunes.
Or wherever your podcasts are sold, or downloaded, or whatever.
And we're back. And just kidding, they're not sponsors. They don't give us any money.
Money me now.
They don't. Money, please. But no, that was a reference to Parks and Rec.
Mm-hmm.
Parks and
I was
Rec.
also making a little bit of an It's Always Sunny reference there.
Which goes over my head. I never got into that show.
Okay. I can understand. It's a bunch of jerks being jerks to each other. So,
No, it was just one of many shows I never just took the time to get into.
yeah. Well, there's plenty of it now, so if you ever felt like binging, you've got it.
That's true. That's true. It might happen one of these days. I mean, because I did it for Arrested Development. You know, I went and I just sort of ran through that with the wife.
That's another show I just rewatched. I'm about halfway through the second season. And I'm still catching things I've never seen before and jokes that I never got. And I have literally seen this show 20 times through. I mean, that show is so tightly written. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, not the last season, though. We quit.
See, it had some good stuff, but the whole Mr. F thing didn't really land. So
Yeah, no, we quit. We never finished the last season. Anyway, point being, while we're in the middle of the show and we're talking about other shows on the network, we don't get money from them. We don't get money from anybody. And because of that, we don't have any money to spend on advertising. So if you do enjoy this show, and if you enjoy what we're about to say about Logan, or if you disagree with us and you need people to back your side to tell us we're wrong, tell a friend. Share the episode. If you see it on Twitter, you see it, wherever you find it, give it a share. Pass the word around.
Yeah, and if you happen to sit on the board of some large, powerful charity and feel like making a donation, support the arts. That's all I'm saying.
This isn't art.
Shh.
Come on.
We're talking about art, therefore it is art.
Sure, I'll give you that. That's fine. All right,
The transitive powers be.
Yes, let's stop screwing around. Logan, you just got back from the theater, so before we get into the nitty-gritty, what did you think?
I think they can go ahead and cancel any future ideas to make a comic book movie because they perfected the form in this movie. Doesn't need to be done again. I absolutely loved this movie. It made me cry. It made me laugh. It made me cry again. It made me stare at the screen, open maw, like just totally open mouth, just in awe of what I'm watching. I ate it up for however long. It didn't even feel like 2 hours. I just sat there fully engaged in this movie for just the entire duration.
Wow. That is a ringing endorsement, Liam.
Yeah.
For this movie.
I saw the Wolverine in theaters. Yeah. And I was like, okay, this isn't going to be good, but, you like Wolverine and it's in the theater, so let's go see it. And sure, I had fun. It had some fun stuff, but then, it kind of derailed itself, as a lot of those movies do. This one, it's like they finally understood the character. And they, instead of trying to make something that we've seen before within a comic book movie, they finally found a way to sort of break that mold a bit and give us some of the things that we love about the character and have seen in the comics and to a limited amount in some of the previous movies, but they just finally amped it up to the levels of Wolverine fury that we have seen only in the comics, and they put it on the screen and they didn't pull any punches. And they allowed people to drop F-bombs. It felt like a real movie as opposed to a movie where the studio was really making a lot of changes to things and really forcing it to go in a direction. Spoiler alert.
Oh, yeah. This whole thing, from here on out, we're spoiling everything about this movie. Or rather, I will quickly say I liked it. I didn't like it as much as you, but I also thought it was a very well-done flick. I obviously have some things as a thing, but that's it. That's your spoiler-free review. Now, into the spoilers. Go for it, Liam.
3, 2, one, they kill Wolverine. They actually kill the main character in a movie. That is not a common thing that we see ever. I mean, even in a movie where lots of people are dying. Harry Potter died, but he came back. It just doesn't happen. And it happened in this. And it was treated with real reverence and real weight. I made the joke with Ray that at the end of the movie, we sat through the whole credit scene and everything to make sure there wasn't a stinger. And there wasn't. So if you're going to go see it and you haven't seen it, go ahead and leave the theater if you don't feel like watching the credits, because it's just credits.
Hey, those people worked on the movie.
We are production people. We appreciate their work, and we
That's
sit
right.
there and we watch because we, understand that. But not everybody does.
And you get to enjoy the score, too.
Some people want to ditter on their Twitter, and they can't wait any longer. So, But, blown away. I made the joke that I was expecting at the end there to be a stinger where you just see the grave of Wolverine, and there's like some music rumbling, and then you see a shaman dancing off in the ground, the distance, and then all of a sudden, like, the ground starts quaking, and you see his hand burst up, sort of like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie.
Or Shaman, the character from Alpha Flight, Wolverine's original superhero team.
That's true. That is true. He
Dropping
did that.
knowledge bombs on you.
Yeah, but they kill him, and they leave the movie on his grave. They don't tell you what is going to happen to the children characters. It doesn't show you what's going to happen for them next. It doesn't give them even a clear leader as to, I was thinking Wolverine was going to survive the movie because he would then take the role of Charles with this new generation of mutants. And they didn't do that. It was a movie that didn't do what I thought it was going to do so frequently. My one complaint that I had, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago when we were reviewing the trailers, it did indeed show Caliban about to die in the trailer.
It did. You were completely right on that. You called that one.
Yeah. I saw the grenades and was like, wait a second, you can't be serious. And they were serious. They showed him with the grenades about to commit suicide and trying to take out some of the Reavers. And,
yeah, just that, the same as I called the burying Professor X thing. Like, to me, it was just a glaring hint that Professor X is... I mean, I think with his age and all that, you kind of assumed he was going to die before the end of the movie anyway.
Yeah.
But with that scene of he's bloody, he's clearly been in a fight, he's holding what clearly looks like a shovel, he's looking down sad, and she comes up and holds his hand. Well, in the trailer, we only saw like 3 other people, and none of... so it could have been burying Caliban, I guess, but to me it was like, oh, clearly it's them burying Professor X.
Yeah, I did not anticipate the involvement of X-24.
Yeah, that's a thing I want to talk about.
I don't understand all of that part of the movie, like exactly how his existence came to be and everything. I did think it was kind of cool to see Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, where he's just totally like mindless and feral and just going for it without any of the hesitation or self-sacrifice or anything, I can understand why people wouldn't like that, but I thought it was cool to see.
Well, since you brought it up, let's talk X-24 quick here then.
Let's do it.
Because this was, I think, my biggest problem with the movie, is I didn't need that character. And I read, after seeing the movie, I went and I read interviews with the writer, and he is there for exactly the reason you think he's there. Because they wanted Logan to be able to see what he used to be when he was younger and just filled with rage, and what he would still be had he not found a family in Professor X and the X-Men, because his whole thing is that he doesn't really need anybody anymore. He's still doing the right thing. He's going to wait for Professor X to die, bring him out to sea so he doesn't hurt anybody, and then, he's going to kill himself, sort of thing. And so it's the idea that family is worthwhile, or blah, blah, that whole message. Like, that's the reason they did The Young Clone, was exactly the reason we talk about how we don't like Marvel movies, because you just have to inevitably fight the evil version of yourself in every superhero movie ever.
That is true.
And I didn't need I didn't need him in there. I didn't see the point of it. And again, to be clear, I did like this movie. But just when I saw the X-24, I said, oh, so are you going to do a thing where you actually kill, Wolverine? Like, I knew Professor X was going to die, but we've seen in previous X-Men movies that he does sort of a body swap thing, like at the end of X3.
Mm-hmm. I didn't see that because I booed and stood up and walked out of the theater before the credits even began.
Okay,
fully.
well, that's the awful, like, post-credit scene.
F you, Brett Ratner. You ruined that movie.
So the post-credit scene of that is, the point being...
I will find you one day, Brett. I will find you.
You good?
Yeah, I'm fine now.
Great. The thought that I was brewing in my head is if they were going to go more comic booky, what you would end up doing is Wolverine gets his mind transferred into the body of X-24, so he's young again, and then he becomes the professor to all of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, oh, is that the reason you're there? No, you're just kind of there. And plus, I need somebody to explain to me the adamantium bullet thing. I get that it shatters the adamantium skull, and is it just the idea that if he has damage to his brain that his healing factor doesn't work anymore? Because I would think his brain would just heal itself. Yeah. And if he had memory loss or something, that was the whole point of X-Men Origins and the adamantium bullet, is that he did heal from getting shot in the head with it. He, lost his memories, which was an awful plot device. But the point being, I don't know. I was trying to figure out if you have a human skull that's laced in adamantium, and part of that adamantium is removed because that, corner of your head gets blown off, would you not just regrow your skull back? Wouldn't he still be able to get up and keep going over time? If there's...
I would think so.
Or is it just it completely shuts down your brain, therefore it shuts down all of the processes in your body, and then you can't heal? I sort of get that.
Given my rather limited knowledge on neuroscience, I mean, I have a little... seriously, I do actually have a little bit of understanding on some of the functions of the brain.
Oh, yeah.
But, the on-off switch for your brain is at the base of your skull.
Right.
So she shot him in, the front lobe of your brain on the left side of his head. I wouldn't think Wolverine would be taken out by that.
Yeah.
I think he would regrow from that. It might be a thing where that Wolverine is sort of like the Wolverine at the end of X-Men Origins Wolverine, where he does get shot and he just forgets everything.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I wouldn't think that particular shot would have been a lethal shot for Wolverine. I think if anything, she would have had to shoot him at the base of the skull, because then that would just be... I mean, again, the type of bullet would matter also, because some bullets do, more of a blunt force trauma, and some
the
are more of a
mushrooming
piercing.
Yeah.
So perhaps the right type of bullet shot in just the right spot would be enough for an on-off kind of for his brain, and perhaps that would be enough that his X factor wouldn't work without his brain telling it to. I don't know if it's just a genetic thing where his genes know what to do without needing any sort of impetus from the brain.
Right, but it's and for story purposes, I get it, but I don't like it because it meant that you have Logan fighting the stronger, younger version of himself, so then he loses, but gets saved at the very last minute by the girl because she comes back, and so you're throwing a Hollywood trope into the mix. Plus this whole fact that I don't care that they kill Xander Rice, unless he somehow is holding all of the secrets, which it doesn't seem like he does, this facility is still down in Mexico, still turning out Wolverines. And
they did show Caliban's body there, and he mentioned the fact that you should harvest him because he has, tracking abilities and a increased intellect or whatever.
Yeah.
So I could very much see that they could make another movie set in this universe where they are tracking X-23 using some new clone made from Caliban.
Right. So it's I get that. I liked that they were using... Clearly, we did read the two comics we needed to read because there was a lot of sort of Paradise Lost that was sort of wrapped up in here, the X-23 story.
I think we could have also maybe thrown in the Death of Wolverine in there.
Maybe a little.
I mean, it's not a heavily referenced, but there is some stuff in there that definitely would have tied into all of this.
Okay. I read that, and I guess none of that really stuck, but...
I think a lot of it was more like... for me, it was... when I was watching the movie, I was really thinking of the last panels in that graphic novel after Wolverine has killed the guy and after he's already been doused in the liquid adamantium and he's just like walking out to die in the sun or whatever.
Yeah, on the rooftop, yeah.
And he's just kind of thinking about his life.
Okay.
That to me is sort of like, they didn't show us in this movie any like flashbacks to any of the previous movies.
Which is nice.
Yes, exactly. I was really hoping that they weren't going to do that, just to preserve the integrity of this movie as opposed to even bringing in anything from any of the previous.
Right. But it's just in Paradise Lost and in, Logan's origin story, they always do this thing where here's this facility that created you, but it got destroyed when you got out. So that narratively, you can cap the idea of any more of them coming. Though obviously, for those that have continued to read any of the X-23, the all-new Wolverine, there are some other X-23 clones out there, but they're clones of her. The point being, so we know that they can make these kids, but in general, they did a bad job. You can't turn children into weapons because they'll kill themselves and harm themselves and that sort of thing. So cool, great, I get that. But it's the idea that X-24 was completely pointless. It could have been the Reavers that killed the people. That Wolverine took out a couple of the Reavers instead of fighting X-24 there and him getting hit by the car. Again, a last-minute save, getting hit by the car and impaled on the tree, which obviously was the foreshadowing to what happens to Logan at the end.
Mm-hmm.
It was unnecessary. I would have preferred Logan fighting all of the Reavers without steroids, without the whole steroid thing, even though that gave us a great scene. But we saw at the beginning of the movie that he took out those guys that were beating on him, and when he was trying to protect his car from the guys that were stealing the hubcaps or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So he's still capable of doing that and of tearing into people. So you just get him, and it's just his last hurrah. So he doesn't mind knowing that he's going to die from it. So he gets the other kids to safety. Laura can still come back and help at the end, and then we can get Logan dying by sacrificing himself, whatever, which is the same thing here. It's just he's not fighting a perhaps CG'd younger version of Hugh Jackman. It's the Deadpool fight.
I just don't know who does Wolverine fight in this movie that will kill him?
The Reavers. He's dying anyway. The whole point is do enough damage to him and his body won't be able to recover anymore. Because that's how he dies. He doesn't die from any special Wolverine killing anything. He dies because his healing factor isn't good enough, and he just takes too much damage.
Yeah.
That's it.
The green juice, that actually is in the Death of Wolverine. And it's not actually a steroid. It's a liquefied version of his healing factor.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Because at that point in the comics, he didn't have a healing factor anymore.
Yes. Yeah. And so in the end, he could have used it to save himself, but he used it to save the test subjects that they were experimenting on, and then he allowed himself to die in the Death of Wolverine story.
Could have done that too.
In this, I think it makes a little sense to have someone who can stand toe to toe and maybe even surpass Logan. Because
we've done that. We've done that so many times. We did that with Lady Deathstrike in X2, where you had somebody who was just as good as him and could fight the same way. We've done that with Sabretooth multiple times.
Yeah, I'm just saying in this movie, if your intention is to kill him, we need somebody who feels like they can do that. Because, Xander, or not Xander, the Reaver dude.
Yeah, Donald Pierce.
Pierce, yes. He had a little bit of an intimidation factor going to him, and clearly he was motivated and capable, but I didn't feel like he was really physically a threat to Wolverine. And
no, but again,
their numbers, sure, they've got a bunch of them, but I don't know. We've seen Wolverine tear through a bunch of mercenaries before.
Right. No, and that's fair, but it's just he is already dying. His body is what's killing him.
Yeah, but he's
so that's the
by
whole
the
point,
adamantium.
There is no bad guy. There shouldn't have to be anybody that he has to punch to try and keep living.
No, but
because in the end, that's the whole message of the movie, is that he can't outrun it. He knows he's dying, so he's going to do this last one good thing, even though he didn't want to.
Yeah, but his death wasn't, I think, as imminent as you are sort of implying. The adamantium in him was making him sick, and his healing factor was no longer able to, overcome that, in addition to continually repairing his body. But, I think that he would have survived the events of this movie and been able to live for a while longer as is before just succumbing to his natural state, had he not been all torn up by the X-24 and the Reavers, because clearly they did do a number on him also.
Yeah, because it's like, I guess, but it's, you fill him full of enough holes, and if you want to do the green, healing factor serum or whatever as well, I don't know. It was just that was the main thing that bothered me, but that was kind of it. Like, it was the idea that they can still make X-24s. The kids are going to find Eden, which, as far as we're aware, doesn't exist. So the kids are going to die of exposure, except X-23. Though they're all X-23s, but Laura. So everybody but Laura dies from exposure in the wilderness of Canada, and Mexico continues to crank out Wolverines, and there's no X-Men left to stop them, and the world ends. That is the continuance of this story. And it's sort of, okay. And then there was the fact that we got a tease for Mr. Sinister at the end of X-Men Apocalypse, as they have Wolverine's blood, and the idea that was going to be a tease for this Wolverine movie. But we didn't get Mr. Sinister, which I'm okay with, by the way. I'm just saying he wasn't there. Yeah. We got a tease for a character that didn't show up. I guess my only other thing is, I don't know that we needed the Xander Rice backstory, because I like that it was there as sort of an Easter egg almost for those that read the X-23 comic, but he just sort of blurts the whole thing out. Yeah, by the way, yes, you did kill my dad. Yes, he was on the original thing, but it's cool. I don't want to kill you. I just want to control mutants or whatever. And you find out he's basically the guy that killed all of these mutants after all of these years in order to harvest their genetic material. He's basically Mr. Sinister, where he's into all the genetics and stuff like that. I don't know that we necessarily needed that, or if we did, I feel like it should have been worked more organically into the movie, because there's other times we see him and we get the whole backstory of the kids.
I would have liked it to be fleshed out a little bit more clearly, but if it was done in a more organic way, that'd be great. The part with Professor Xavier, and he is in bed and he's talking about how he just had a good day and it's the first time in a long time and he doesn't deserve it, and he remembers what he did, but they don't explicitly tell you. Right. They
pretty much do.
They mention that,
but it's not a character saying it.
Yes, they say that he hurt some people, and there was like a radio broadcast that we hear that a bunch of people, like 600 people, got stricken with this temporary paralysis, and then that there were some people there were like 70 casualties or something like that. So I was curious as to whether whether they were trying to set it up that Xavier had accidentally killed all the X-Men by having one of these seizures.
Yeah, and with that, I say let's start talking about the stuff we loved, because that is the first thing for me of things that I loved about this.
Okay.
Loved it. Neither of us saw it coming.
Yeah, that was the thing. I was wondering if it was Magneto or something.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was thinking it would be some sort of weapon, or if it was like a jet because it showed all the light and stuff. Everybody was, because they showed Professor X backlit. I love that, because it's the one callback to all of the other X-Men stuff, because Professor X's signature thing in all of the movies is he freezes everybody and gets in and says his piece and says, look how powerful I am, basically, and then gets out. So the fact that now that he's old and he has a degenerative, a brain condition that leads to seizures, that of course his powers would go out of control. And I'm trying to think, I want to say it's the Earth X series, but there was something about when Professor X dies in this dystopian future comic book, that there's a psychic shockwave that kills every psychic on the planet, or it killed a bunch of people or something like that.
I remember that when I was reading the Earth X series. That was from that, yeah.
So I love the idea that what Logan wants to do is take Professor X out into the ocean where he'll die. Like, it's literally because Professor X says, you're waiting for me to die. And the answer is, yes, I am. But I'm going to get you away from everybody, which is why he's kept in the water tower thing, which was sort of a pseudo-cerebro. So I kind of called that one. But I loved that. I loved the Professor X seizure thing. I thought that was perfect. I loved that Laura was Mexican and bilingual.
Yes.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Her original appearance on the X-Men Evolution cartoon, she has a darker skin tone. I love that they sort of kept that idea, and they talked about that a little bit in some of the articles I was reading where they were talking to the director and the writer and stuff like that about the character and why to them it was important for that to be the case. And no, I love it.
Yeah,
Like,
and it makes sense. I mean,
yeah,
they wouldn't allow that sort of testing in America, you know?
well, comic books. There's
Well, again,
millions of
it
evil
depends on how
corporations.
high up you go with it. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
But it would be a lot easier to do it in a third world situation, sort of thing, you know?
Yeah, and it's just great to have fewer white people running around.
And she kicked ass. Oh, man, she was awesome. I'm just saying she kicked ass.
Yes.
She was so good.
My nerdgasm moment was the first time you see X-23 in action.
Oh, when she has that dude's head.
Yeah.
And she just comes walking out and she's like, no. And she just throws the head down at him and then starts like shucking her backpack and then like growing the claws out. And he's like, okay, no, get her, you know, and it's just like tears those people apart. Oh man, that was cool. And she didn't even use her foot claws at first.
Right. And then when they introduced it, I didn't need to talk about her using those only defensively, yada, yada, yada. I thought it was neat because they're like, hey, by the way, remember Professor X is a professor of genetics.
Yeah.
You know, so he knows about these things. But no, I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Another thing that sort of bucked expectations is I sort of expected her to either be mute the whole movie or like only say one or two things towards the end. Mm-hmm. And they kind of did that, but they had her do the whole I don't talk, just kidding, now I explode and I shout at you for a really long time.
Yeah.
And that to me was kind of tropey. I would have preferred more like the comic where she can talk. It's just in general she doesn't unless she was like in character, if you remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like when she's in character, she can talk fluently. It's just normally she's just very silent because she's just taught to look and listen and smell and focus on her surroundings. But I like that eventually she was able to talk and that she didn't talk much.
I like her ability to let out the most feral little girl's growls that I could ever imagine. She was so good at that.
It's like that that YouTube video of the little girl that's doing the martial arts thing.
Yes.
And just screaming. You're like, yeah, because you know what? That's what
She's
a little girl would
3 feet
sound
tall,
like.
but she would level me. You know,
Yes.
and that's what she's doing in this movie. She's just flipping people, and oh man, it's so great. It is so great to watch.
Yes. So in that, I mean, that alone to me kind of made the movie and was my total nerdgasm because it's when they get it right.
Yeah.
Like that was the thing where this movie didn't make me cry. I thought it was going to at some point. I got a little misty just in seeing that though, which tells you the kind of geek that I am, is the thing that sort of started getting me misty or whatever was just the nerd joy of seeing a character that you enjoy done right.
Yes.
Like, they did right by the character. That's the thing that gets me, not necessarily the material in the film. It was like seeing Spider-Man in Civil War. Like the nerdgasm of, oh, you got it. You understood it.
Yeah.
Thank you. It took 30 years of my life before I was able to actually see something on screen that made sense and matched. You know, it's Christopher Reeve's Superman, but without the flying backwards around the earth and killing everybody to spin back time. But it was those moments in those movies where they get it right. That's so perfect as a comic book fan to see. And that was, you know, Deadpool was very much that. And the opening scene here, which I don't know, maybe we'll talk about that next week in our conversation of stuff, is we'll talk about the pre-scene with Deadpool. Because there is an extended version that's on YouTube that Ryan Reynolds put out. So I think we'll wait until you get to see the full version, and then we'll talk about that. But that was also wonderful.
Yeah, that was a great little opener. Ray and I both thought that it was the movie. We thought it was within the movie, you know? And it would make sense because Deadpool also has a healing factor. So if this is a future world, then he would still be alive as well. So,
and that is one sad thing, is not actually being able to see the two of them in a movie together.
Oh, that'd be great.
Where Deadpool gets to make fun of Hugh Jackman's accent.
That would be so good. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's okay. That's okay. So what did you think? Let's move on to some of the other things in this movie. What did you think of the rest of the kids? What did you think of the fact that there were multiple X-23s who were all kind of sort of based off other X-Men?
Yeah.
With the exception of Richter, which I will explain in a second. But what did you think of the kids?
I thought they were cool. Clearly, a lot of them were derivative of other characters we've seen, but these were not the characters we've seen. Like, there's the little girl with the frost breath, which clearly that's similar to Iceman.
Because he did the frost breath thing onto the drinks and
Yeah,
stuff.
but we've only seen her use it through her breath. So we don't know that she has any other ice powers. And she uses it to freeze a dude's arm and then shatter it. It was so awesome.
But now the question is, if you have all these superpowered kids, did it make sense for you for them to be running away first and then fighting when they had to? I feel like we didn't see them getting to use their powers, and that might have just been a budget thing,
Yeah.
And also, and this might just totally be me, I feel like when they show the wide shots of everybody running, it looked like there was like 40 kids.
Yeah, it did seem like there was a bunch.
Yeah, like you never quite get a handle on how many there are, and then when they show them captured, there's like 6. I don't know.
Yeah.
So the idea is that perhaps these are the New Mutants. They literally are just referred to as New Mutants at some point in the film. Mm-hmm. However, from what I was able to discern, the only character there that we actually know of who exists in comics is Richter, that lead boy, who is Mexican in the comics, and he is a mutant. He was introduced in the first volume of X Factor when they got the original X-Men together and called themselves X Factor for the first time. Mm-hmm. And so he was a trainee in that book, then went on to the X-Terminators, then New Mutants, and then X-Force, and then sort of floated around for a while, was one of the mutants that lost his powers, yada, yada, yada. So there is a new mutant called Richter who controls, has seismic abilities, controls the Earth sort of thing. But what's weird here is we are getting a New Mutants movie. There is a movie coming out that is called New Mutants, which would be like, perfect. Are you going to continue this story? And we're going to get to see Laura's story continue and that sort of thing. No, Richter is not among the characters in that movie. That's going to be like the original team of New Mutants, I think, which was like Wolvesbane and Cannonball and those characters.
And Strong Guy?
Not Strong Guy. Strong Guy was an X Factor guy. He wasn't in the New Mutants.
Oh.
He was like the second or third volume of X Factor.
He would be pretty impossible to put on screen, though.
Nah, he would just look like The Rock in The Mummy 2.
Yeah, but his whole thing is he just keeps getting even bigger and bigger and bigger the more,
Or, he would look like Mr. Hyde in the awful League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie.
Oh, no thank you. No thank you.
Or no, the bad guy. It wasn't Hyde, right? Because didn't he have to fight a evil version of himself in that movie? See? The evil version of yourself.
And this one was red. That version.
Yeah, that's how you know. But no, I thought it was fine. I like the introduction, but I really want to see the rest of Laura's story now.
Yeah, I would like to see a continuation of this.
Now, I'm also okay with it being a standalone story. It's just you're putting this character in the future and not doing a whole lot with her now. Yeah. And so I worry that might be the end of that character. I mean, that's not necessarily the case. We've all sorts of comic book movies that reboot and, have different takes on characters.
This being one of them.
But I would love to see a grown-up X-23 take Wolverine's place in future X-Men movies. Mm-hmm. If you're tying them all together, if you end up tying Deadpool into the other X-Men movies, and you have Cable travels through time. Go get X-23.
One of the other things that I liked in this movie, and it sort of struck similar to a movie maybe you've seen called Hannah?
Did I see Hannah? I know of Hannah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where it just shows this little girl who's been raised in such a sheltered environment with not even the smallest creature comfort like music. Right. And she gets to interact with a real person of her similar age and gets to explore what it means to be human and not just a machine or like a killing tool,
Right. Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons I really loved the movie Hannah, was just getting to see that. And so I thought that scene where Laura crept into the dude's room and, he didn't see her at first, of course. And she just starts like looking at his trophies and then like gets really close to him and like listening to his music. And, she's just like captivated by it, because it's so foreign to her and was like just entrancing her. So I just really liked that scene. But then, of course, when he was like, "Oh, I'll get it back for you in the morning," I was like, "No, you won't. No, you won't."
Yeah, that was brutal, man.
It was. I was not expecting those characters to go down.
No. I mean, maybe the dad.
Yeah,
you know,
I figured maybe
as is
one
the
of
case
them.
with a lot of movies.
Yeah.
So you take out the patriarch, the character that's there. Yeah, no, I thought that scene was really nice. And I think they did a good job of balancing Logan's issues with Xavier's issues with Laura's issues.
And this movie has a body count.
Yes, it does. But I thought they did a good job of balancing those. Now, what about Caliban? Did you think that Caliban was necessary in this movie? Like, they needed, I guess, a way to track them.
Yeah.
But they could always just say, we implanted a tracker in her or something and nobody knows about it. So they didn't necessarily need a character to do that. Was it necessary to have Caliban in here as, like, the sounding board guy, the guy that tells you like it is because Logan's doing that? Or was that just sort of... it's like this movie does so many things well, and I wonder if Caliban was just there because American audiences aren't smart enough to notice that Logan is being stupid and self-destructive. You know what I mean? Like, with good filmmaking, I don't think we would need that character. What did you think?
See, I think his inclusion is necessary. I mean, I think they could have done the things that he provides the movie in a different way, but I just, knowing Wolverine, knowing Logan, seeing how he is in this movie, you would not expect him to be the primary caregiver to an elderly person like Charles Xavier.
Right, which is why we see he's kind of bad at it.
Yeah, and he has some reverence for Professor Xavier, but he also has some resentment. He is not particularly good at being empathetic and being nurturing, so I think if we are going to have Patrick Stewart and Professor Xavier in this movie in his condition, we needed somebody there to be that caregiver.
Though, I mean, we only know that it's been only like a year since Caliban's been around, and it seemed sort of like, all right, what character can we grab sort of thing? And I guess they're like, well, who would survive? And they're like, I don't know, Caliban, because he can't be in the sun. You know, it was sort of that idea of like, why Caliban? Well, it's because he can track them and they needed that character in the movie then.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. I didn't mind it. I just think that's it. When we're talking about the movie, you sort of have to ask that question of, is Caliban hurting the plot by being around? Is he doing, giving us stuff that we don't necessarily need in the plot? Because without Caliban, they have a harder time tracking them. We get more time with the Reavers, and that would have given them the opportunity to go into some more backstory just via little drops of exposition as to the history of, say, Xander Rice, if he were on the team alongside Donald Pierce. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we would have to cut back to them more so we could follow their search. I don't know. I mean, it would make for a different movie.
Yeah, we need a mechanism to be able to track them. So there could have been, they could have done the standard cliche thing and just put a tracking device. They do tracking devices all the time. They could have done that. I'm kind of glad that they didn't, just because that is such a cliche.
Yeah.
They could have done, like they're just following the bandwidth and listening to police scanners and stuff and just hearing various things that are leading them to believe Wolverine might be here or there. Because that's what Pierce seems to have done when he's talking to Wolverine in his limousine at the, towards the beginning of the movie, where he's talking about, sort of like having essentially tracked him just from having heard stories, and then like the Mexican gang that he cuts up that are trying to like, steal his hubcaps or whatever, he gets that information and is able to like put it together that is Wolverine. He's got some skills of his own, so they could have done it that way. For that mechanism within the movie, I don't think we needed Caliban, but in order to show that Patrick Stewart that Xavier is vulnerable and in need of someone, I think we did need Caliban, at least for a little while. We could have used somebody else to do that same thing, but we needed a character there to do some of that.
Yeah, and I suppose they were going with an X-23 that had not yet been used as an assassin.
Yeah.
Like, was clearly trained.
And it doesn't seem like they did the scent trigger.
Yeah, they didn't do the trigger scent, which, see, that to me, like, give me that ending.
That would have been brutal if it was her fighting Wolverine to the death.
I have that in my notes. Like, why do we need X-24 when we have X-23?
Yeah.
Her whole thing is that she's sort of this monster.
And she killed everyone she's ever loved because of that scent trigger, so...
The end of her story is killing her mom.
Yeah,
in
so
that
it would have
Paradise
been
Lost.
pretty brutal, and fitting for her to be the one to kill Wolverine at the end.
Exactly, like if she gets hit with trigger scent, right? And Wolverine sends the rest of the kids running, so he saves the rest of the kids. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we can always sit there and talk about the many things that they could change. But I think it's just the idea that if she wasn't already an assassin, then I guess it wouldn't make sense for her to have an implant that tracks her. Otherwise, she would absolutely have an implant that tracked her if she was already being used out in the field.
It did absolutely devastate me with his death and her, holding his hand.
Well, let's get to this final point. Well, I have one thing before the final point, and that was simply no Stan Lee.
Oh, thank God.
And that would be the wife's thing, too, is when you see him, it can pull you out of the narrative.
That guy cannot die fast enough so I don't have to see him in these movies.
You know what? I'm about to kick you off of this podcast forever. Stan Lee is a saint, and you will respect that man. He is our reason for being here. And he's everybody's favorite grandpa. You ever see the Stan Lee documentary?
He's not Jack Kirby's favorite grandpa.
If you ever see the Stan Lee documentary, it's absolutely fantastic.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled is making you believe that Stan Lee is a good guy.
Oh, let's not, dude. That is not a conversation we are having this week.
Look into it, comic folks. Don't believe the lies. PrisonPlanet.org.
What? What is PrisonPlanet.org?
It's a right-wing radical website where they have all sorts of nonsense.
Okay. All right. Whatever. Anyway, let's get to our final point then of this discussion. Was this a worthy end to the character?
Absolutely.
Why?
One of the things about Wolverine is that he has lived for so long, and he has physically and emotionally and psychologically endured so much pain in his lifetime. I think he wanted to die in this movie. He was going to die probably pretty soon after the end of this movie, whether he would have been injured or not, just from his degenerative condition of his own. But getting to see him put in one last hurrah, fighting like a young man again, and getting to save a future generation of mutants, including someone who essentially is his daughter, who he fought so hard to bond with emotionally, and ultimately he did bond with her, whether it was his intention to or not, even if it was within his dying moments. So I think that, certainly given the events of this movie, it was a well-earned rest for Wolverine at the end of the movie.
I thought it was a decent end to the character, but because of my issues with X-24, I am not going to say it was the ending that I was hoping for. I was more than happy to see the character die. I assumed he was going to be dead before the movie was over. I don't know that the fight with the younger version of him, saved at the last minute by X-23, impaled on a tree, and I wanted to die because I never knew what it was to really live. Family is important. Be good. Bleh. Was kind of it didn't land as strongly as I was hoping it would for me. I thought it was fine, but to me, I didn't want him to go out, to be clear, I didn't want him to go out in a giant superhero battle. I didn't want it to be that sort of thing. I wanted it to be sort of a soft death. I wanted it to be sort of an incidental, or if it's the going out in a blaze of glory kind of thing. But I didn't want it to be a, I'm going to slowly be dying for 8 minutes and make a speech and that sort of thing. Like, that's not what I was looking for. But I was just looking for not, I got killed by my younger self. Wow, this is a very Looper kind of thing.
So were you looking for a Shane ending or not looking for a Shane ending?
Yeah, I thought the inclusion of that was interesting.
By the way, people, Shane dies at the end of that movie, in case there's any dispute.
Oh, is that up for grabs? I don't know. I may have seen it at some point.
It's one of those things. He's wounded and is seen riding off into the sunset.
Right.
But he's kind of slumped over in his saddle, and
Gotcha.
The little boy's yelling to him, and he's not responding. He's totally dead.
See, I would have been more okay with that sort of thing. Or to be definitive, because you need to see the emotional impact on Laura, I guess, because we're also seeing her growth throughout the film. We're seeing character development on everybody's front while we're going through that movie. I don't know. I just, it's that whole idea of fighting the evil version of yourself thing again, I think, just got me too hard. Like the idea that he dies because he gets impaled on a tree branch. I was like, okay, I would have rather seen him die just from his wounds in general. Like, this time my healing factor isn't going to do it. It's not good enough, but hopefully I did my part. Stick together, be a family, because you need to be a family. I guess if that were in there, that would be the I'm dying speech. The Sean Bean death.
Mm-hmm.
I would have followed you to the very fires of Mount Doom, my captain, my... No, that was what Aragorn said to Frodo. Uh-oh. I'm losing nerd cred. But no, good movie. Yes?
Absolutely.
Final thoughts on Logan?
I'm going to go see it again very soon. I loved it.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't own any of the previous X-Men or the Wolverine movies on DVD.
Yeah, no.
I will definitely own this one.
And no, you were saying, when we started, before I told you all the things I had wrong with it on my list, you were saying that it is the perfect comic book movie. After an hour of discussion, do you still hold to that? Is this now your favorite comic book movie of all time? Or now
by far.
Oh, still.
There's not a question of that. The format of a comic book movie is not always perfect. It's not always easy to do a translation from a printed page to a visual image. It's not always easy to take the story and put it from a comic into a screenplay. So I'm willing to give that there are things that they chose to do within this movie that other people might not care for, or that other people, such as yourself, don't like. I personally don't have those issues with this. It was, for me, getting to see my favorite Marvel character treated in the way that I've gotten to see him treated in really good comic books, but have never gotten to see him treated on screen. And Hugh Jackman is such a good Wolverine. I feel so glad that we got a really excellent standalone Wolverine movie out of Hugh Jackman before the time he decides to no longer play the character, which every time he does it, he says it's his last. So we never know.
And I will agree with you. I think that's a great note to go out on. Like we said when we read Old Man Logan, and we said, do this more. Do different stories. Do different themes. It doesn't need to be the same superhero stories over and over
Characters
again
can
and
die.
Origin stories.
A meaningful death is okay for a character. We don't always have to have them survive.
But give us a modern Western. Give us a noir film. Give us a heist film. You know, the reason you like Ant-Man's because it was different from the rest of them. So do more of this. And because we know the reason that they were able to do it, Hugh Jackman took a pay cut in order for them to keep the budget low. When they asked the director how he was able to make this kind of movie or how this movie came about, and he's like, we weren't trying to sell toys. Yeah. That was it. We didn't have...
And there is a toy of him, and I do want it.
Well, it's just the studio wasn't involved in every step of the way saying, you have to do this, you have to do this, we need to link it to this movie and this movie, and we need to make X amount of money in toys.
And there was no love story.
Yeah, well, because what was the budget of this one?
$93 million.
And how much money has it made already?
$237 million.
There you go. Lesson learned. Spend less money.
In 3 days.
Yeah, 3 days. You've more than
$97 million budget is pretty good too. I mean, that's plenty of money to make a good movie out of.
Yeah.
So
cut your budget. Tell me a better story. Tell me a smaller story. We didn't have a ton of I mean, we had all the special effects with violence, but that's why they kept the powers small. That's why you didn't see the Juggernaut running through walls. It's why you didn't see Cyclops shooting laser beams and stuff, because they wanted to keep this story grounded. And just tell us a good story that happens to have superheroes in it rather than telling us a quintessential, quote, superhero story.
Yeah.
And that's what made this such a successful film, I think.
Yeah. It stands apart from the rest.
Yes.
It's an R rating. They use real language, which means people say the F word, and there's blood everywhere.
Because it's a guy with claws punching people.
Yeah, exactly. He's slashing them across the face, through the head, in the throat, through the chest. And whenever we get to see him really just like haul off on somebody and just both hands, even if it's X-24 and X-24 can take it, just seeing him go like two-handed into somebody's chest with his claws, it was a nerdgasm for 2 hours long. I'm spent.
So if you've skipped to the end, go see this movie. We both suggest it.
Absolutely.
We both suggest it. I had my
And
issues.
smoke a cigarette afterwards.
Yeah, but I enjoyed it. So with that, we will close the comic box for this week. Remember, next week we're going to be talking about the distribution of comics as far as a pull list for next week. I don't know. Is there something more that you think we should read there, Liam? Or should we just stick to, it's a free week. You get a week off of your homework, everybody.
Yeah, it's like a
spring break.
A sporting ball bye week.
Yes, it is a bye week. But keep on sending us your suggestions. I will always try and read anything that is suggested to me because I love talking to you guys about it. You can send those to us on Twitter at ComicBoxCast. You can send us an email at thecomicboxpodcast@gmail.com. Or if you want to talk with the rest of the nerds and talk with us more about this movie and what you thought about what we said, head over to our subreddit. So that's reddit.com/r/geektogeekcast. There will be a thread up with a link to this episode, and in there you can throw down, and we can talk some Logan.
Do it, people.
You can find Liam on Facebook. I'll throw a link in the show notes for you guys. Oh, your homework for next week. Go see the extended Deadpool trailer. Go see the new Guardians of the Galaxy trailer. We're going to talk trailers in our news and our weekly geekery for next week.
Mm-hmm. Although, if I tell you to just go see Logan instead of watching any of the movies that result from these trailers, you'll know why.
Yeah, exactly. So we're closing the comic box. We will see you guys next week. Liam, take us out, please.
Bum, bum, bum. Bum, 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 bum.
This is us trying to be sad. I don't know.
Play taps.
Play taps.